Well, hello, it's Imogen here again with Shay to continue our conversations on all things body intelligence, neurobiology, stress, and trauma. And today we have a really fun topic, I think, and that's this idea of glimmers. So I think we'll just start right there. What are glimmers, Shay? Where did the idea or the term come from, and what are they? Yeah.
The term came from Deb Dana. She's a social worker who works with polyvagal theory, and she put it in her book, The Polyvagal Theory and Therapy, in 2018. And a glimmer is a little moment when our neurobiology feels safe or connected, and that helps our nervous system recognize that it's okay to be calm. So it's a moment of well-being.
So can you give us an example?
Yeah. It's
Something
sorry.
outside of you can prompt this
Yes.
moment of feeling of well-being and safety inside
Mm-hmm.
of you, right?
Yeah. So
So
it could
yeah.
be a moment of joy, like you see a beautiful sunrise, um, or you see a father being very tender with his child who's got a boo boo, or you get a hug from somebody, or
Mhm.
um, a wild bird comes up and eats out of your hand, or you really tune into your pet and they look at you with their soulful eyes and melt your heart. Those are all glimmers where you're feeling this sense of well-being and connectedness, so you're feeling safe.
Mhm. Um, so um, we talked about this idea that there can be glimmers of well-being even in times of distress, and I think you kind of alluded to that already, because if you're living with chronic stress or trauma, you're in distress
24/7.
constantly. Yes. um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think everyone can I'm thinking for myself, would this be I'm thinking of my father's funeral, which was a sad occasion for me, but there were definitely many moments of joy, well-being, laughter, connection. Or would they be, maybe it's even more than a glimmer, but is that the same thing?
Excuse me. Yeah, I think so. And maybe, some glimmers are more sustained than others, and there are ways to sustain, we talked about
Mhm.
before. Um, and I
Maybe
think
a
in that
maybe
kind of
a
setting, it's probably even more, uh, makes a bigger impression on the nervous system, a more profound effect, because you're processing your grief with those glimmers happening in between you and other people.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking a better example, because it almost feels like more, it feels like the whole thing was very supportive, and the grief in itself, while on one hand it was a distress, it was a recognized emotion that was supported by other people and my
Mhm.
feelings. But I'm thinking about, for instance, the time when I was caring for my mum and dad. My mum had Alzheimer's, and they were just
Mhm.
it was just, but there'd be like these moments, like a text from a friend, or even just a funny moment with my mum in the midst of the chaos.
Mhm.
That seems more like a glimmer.
Mhm.
Um,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
wanted to mention something. It's a little bit of a sidetrack, but you talked about the um, experiencing these emotions with the support of other people who were
mhm,
sharing them with you, and
mhm,
that is just one of the most important things that we can do
mhm.
for each other. Just witness each other's grief and sorrow and joy, just this much,
Yeah,
and that helps
yeah.
the person not have to carry it all. And that's what our nervous systems are made for. And if we could do
Mm.
that more often, we'd all be healthier and happier, and go to the doctor less. Fewer pills too.
Yeah, yes. And to bring that back to the idea of glimmers, I think glimmers are a way of helping ourselves remember, or that might be the wrong word, helping ourselves experience these tiny moments that then can build.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, so how could you increase your capacity to notice glimmers? I mean, is it simply like, I'm just going to make more of an intention? Because it feels like often these moments could pass us by
Mm-hmm.
without awareness,
Right. Well,
and
most
then we're
people
not getting the benefit.
yeah. Well, we get a benefit, but not the full benefit. And
Uh-huh.
most people, that it does pass by. This is a
Mm-hmm.
natural and normal thing. Most people have glimmers. They just don't recognize what it is. Just like really with all the work that we do, we're already experiencing these things. But if we don't have the concepts and the terms, we're not utilizing them to our best benefit. So when we understand this, we can look for glimmers, notice them more often, and we can actually uh, behave in ways that encourage the possibility of a glimmer. You remember a few years ago when my friend, dear shipmate friend Ed, passed away. I planted a garden for about 3 years and grew flowers in his name. And I wanted to do something very Ed and share the good stuff with other people. So I came up with the idea of the posy bombs, little bottles with 3 little flowers in them. And
Yes, I was a very happy recipient of these a few times.
yeah, the
So,
first one too, right?
mm-hmm.
And I would take them to, the receptionist at the doctor's office or whatever. And a few times I gave them to random people on the streets, and it just changed their whole affect. And
Mm-hmm.
it gave this exchange between us that wouldn't have happened. This one woman, she parked real close to my car and I couldn't get out very easily. And she apologized profusely. And so I was like, oh, here, have a posy bomb. And she said, what do you mean? She goes, what do I do? Do I just take one? Like, no, the whole little thing's no, really? She couldn't believe it. And then we had this lovely little conversation, and I went off to my appointment and she went off wherever she was going, and we carried some of each other with us. So I kind of set the stage for the possibility. There was no way I could have known she would have parked next to me and we would have this exchange. But if I hadn't given that to her, I would have given it to the receptionist as I planned, and she would have had some kind of a reaction that probably would have been a bit of a glimmer for both of us.
Yeah. I'm reminded of early on in the pandemic where the most of the world was in lockdown. My good friend Miriam, who's a psychotherapist in the UK, started this page or group on Facebook called Nisolation, not isolation, Nisolation. And just every day she'd have like a little prompt to share a picture of your favorite mug, or just little ordinary things around our house that we like, or and I think she was encouraging us is to see little glimmers when everything just seemed like topsy-turvy, and what what's going on with the world. And
That's a
so
lovely idea, and I can see how that
yeah.
would work. Like, so you said favorite mug, I thought of mine, which was made by a friend of my mother when I was like 8 years old, and I still have it. And she and I are Facebook friends. She's no longer a potter; she's a photographer. But I still have this mug that she made way back when she started pottery, and it connects me to her. And there's something special about the bond between us because of this mug.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes it can really bring up quite deep things that are meaningful, and sometimes it's just like, yeah, I like this because it feels good in my hand, or
Or it has Hello Kitty on it, and that makes me laugh, or whatever.
yeah, exactly. It could be silly, it could be all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
So
Anything that brings a sense of goodness to you.
huh.
Another thing I do sometimes is I try to invite a glimmer of well-being by just pausing, like especially when I'm in the forest, and noticing where I am and asking myself, because I have so many issues with safety, is there any threat here? Is it safe here? And if I focus on the safety enough that, yeah, I'm actually safe here. Nobody's hurting me. There's nobody around to hurt me. But, I feel connected to nature, to the world through the trees and the animals and the birds. And then I can notice a glimmer of feeling connected and safe and everything's okay right in this moment. And the more I can recognize at the nervous system level that everything's okay at this moment, the more my nervous system can stop being hypervigilant.
It seems, as well as the kind of moments of human connection that can give us those glimmers, that it seems like there's a lot that we can get from the natural world, whether it's just like a flower or a posy bomb that someone surprises you with, or like you say, that it's maybe easier in a safe natural environment to experience them. Just this last year, they've near where I live, there's now a meadow that they've put a trail through. They're kind of just letting it be for the most part, and I just get so much joy, lots and lots of glimmers walking there most days.
That shows in your pictures.
Yeah.
You notice these tiny little flowers growing up the other plants and so on.
Yeah. So a lot of it is like, oh, I can really like, oh, this beautiful grass or flower, wildflower. But then it's also like, oh, I can look over the expanse of the meadow and see all the grasses waving and stuff, So
it brings you that good feeling inside.
It
Because
really
you feel
does.
safe and connected.
And
the connection can be between you and nature, or you and an animal, or you and a plant, or you and another person, or you and the universe, or your civic organization, or whatever. The safe connection at every level is very valuable to our nervous system. It's a biological imperative. When we don't feel safe in our nervous systems, bad things happen.
So I have a question that's just occurred to me. It's like in my Facebook group, the Body Intelligence community, if anyone wants to join, I often post a little prompt about like noticing moments of joy. And I feel like I'm actually asking about glimmers, but I don't think it's exactly the same.
In my sense, joy is a kind of glimmer. For me, a lot of these like joy, peace, love, and beauty, those things that we feel inside of us very strongly, in a positive, connected, safe way, those have been inaccessible for me for much of the last 5 years, because my nervous system is so busy spending all its energy trying to regulate its systems and my emotions and my thoughts and my behaviors that I don't get access to. That's kind of a luxury for an overloaded nervous system.
And is that kind of like a kind of catch-22? Because noticing the glimmers would actually help your nervous system. So you've got to be regulated enough to be able to be aware and notice.
Right. Well, and
but also
again,
then it can
again, knowing this little bit about our neurobiology, we can use that as a tool to improve our quality of life, and that affects the people around us too. So yeah, knowing the concept of the glimmers, I can, number one, just notice them more when I do, if I do have them. And sometimes I've had like cognitive glimmers where I can't feel it in me, but I can.
But you recognize intellectually.
Yeah, like the light coming through a tree that's lit up in the fall or something, and I'll go, wow, that's really beautiful. But I don't feel it here, but I still notice it and make note of it. And it's better than nothing.
I don't know, and I'm sorry you don't feel it, but I think you are feeling something, but it's not at the level where you.
Yeah, it's more like an appreciation rather than a feeling. And yeah, it was really tough a few years ago. I couldn't feel love for my kids when I was near death. That was one of the worst things, is I could think about them and think how much I love them, but I couldn't feel it. And that was one of the worst parts of the whole experience. We got way off track here.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
so knowing about glimmers, I can focus on them. I do feel them increasingly, especially since I started focusing on them. And the more I learn about them, the more I recognize that I've, had some, many times in my life, and
Mhm.
that I've also committed some to memory through.
All right. So that's kind of like making it become more than a glimmer. I
Mhm.
think that's going into the idea of savoring, which maybe
Right.
we'll talk about
Next
in the
time.
next video, perhaps. Yes, let's do that next time.
All right.
Anything else about glimmers themselves? Um,
Um, well, I wanted to note that as human beings, we have a negativity bias. We're always looking for the bad and the dangerous, for self-protection.
mhm,
That's
mhm,
natural and normal. And in our culture, there's a lot of that going on. And when we're focused on that, of course, that is hard on our nervous system. But we also have the capacity in our nervous systems to notice these glimmers. And Dr. Dan Siegel says focused
mhm.
attention is our superpower. So as we've heard, what we focus on grows. The more we focus on our glimmers, the more we're going to see them, notice them, experience them, and make room for more in our lives.
Sounds
Simple
very
little
much
tool.
like ease as I teach that concept in my
Mm-hmm.
work too. The more you can notice, the more you do notice, the more you get the benefit, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So I just wanted to finish off by we kind of mentioned that nature is often a really great setting in which to notice glimmers. It's where it can often just happen naturally. And Shay and I are on September 10th for the first time holding an outdoor workshop, a regulating walk in nature at a lovely place near where we are, Newling Grist Mill in Glen Mills, Pennsylvania. But if you're local, check it out. That would be a great place, I think, to
Mm.
have the opportunity for lots of glimmers, both from nature and hopefully some nice human connection as well. So, yeah,
Really looking forward to it. It's a
yeah,
perfect setting too.
yeah. All right. Thanks for this. Glimmers, I think just the word really gets across the concept
Mm-hmm.
in
Good
itself.
one.
We talk about glimmers of hope, right? Glimmers.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Thank you
Thank you.
for glimmers. Yes.